All right, let's take a trip back in time, shall we? We're heading to 18th century Paris. Now, this was a century of just breathtaking elegance and mind-blowing new ideas, but it all ended in an incredibly violent revolution. We're about to explore a city of extremes, a place that really did change the world forever. Okay, let's dive in.
You know, when you really boil it down, 18th century Paris was a tale of two completely different cities living side by side. On one hand, you had this glittering center for art and philosophy. I mean, this is where thinkers like Voltaire and Rousseau were changing the way people thought about everything. But right behind all that, there was another Paris, a city where unbelievable luxury for a tiny few was built on the crushing poverty of pretty much everyone else. And that contrast? That is the absolute key to understanding everything that's about to happen.
And we're not talking about some sleepy little town here. This was a massive, sprawling metropolis of about 600,000 people. That made Paris one of the largest and most important cities on the entire planet, a true global hub of power and culture.
So let's start our tour where all the power was, right? In the incredibly opulent world of the French aristocracy.
And really, there's no better symbol of that power than the Palace of Versailles. Built by King Louis XIV, this place was more than a home, it was a statement. A gilded cage that consumed a frankly astonishing chunk of the entire country's budget. With over 700 rooms, the king literally moved the entire French court and government here, making it the absolute undeniable center of all political life.
Yeah, life inside Versailles? It was basically one big, constant performance. Thousands of nobles lived there, and their entire existence, from morning till night, revolved around these super elaborate ceremonies, all just to compete for a moment of the king's attention. From the perfectly manicured gardens to the insane outfits, every single detail was designed to project an image of absolute, untouchable power.
Okay, so back in Paris itself, the aristocracy was living in pretty much the same kind of splendor. They built these enormous private mansions, called hôtels, all along the River Seine. I mean, these places had dozens of rooms just for throwing parties, and get this, they even had private docks on the river. This meant all their stuff and all their fancy guests could arrive by boat, completely avoiding the muddy, disgusting public streets.
But, you know, it wasn't all just about parties and luxury. Les Invalides, also founded by Louis XIV, was this monumental home and hospital for wounded soldiers. It was huge. It could house up to 4,000 veterans, giving them care and a place to live with dignity. It was a project that kind of combined that royal grandeur with a real sense of duty to the men who fought for France.
Now, I want you to leave that world of manicured gardens and polished marble floors behind. We're about to step into the streets of the common Parisian, and believe me, it was a world that was crowded, chaotic, and almost unimaginably filthy.
Just think about Notre-Dame Cathedral. Today, we picture it sitting in this big open plaza, right? Well, back then, it was completely choked by this dense maze of old medieval buildings. The streets around it were narrow, they were dark, and they were slick with this disgusting mix of horse manure and human waste from open sewers because, yeah, people just dumped their chamber pots right out the window. The spiritual heart of the city was literally surrounded by filth.
And this right here, this is the perfect illustration of the contrast we're talking about. You had the Hôtel de Soissons, an elegant palace with these beautiful, pristine gardens, a total oasis of calm. But literally just outside its walls was the central food market. The streets there were a total nightmare of rotting vegetables, fish guts, and animal blood. And the stench was just overpowering. Two completely different worlds, separated by nothing more than a single wall.
And the river, my gosh, the Seine. It was the city's main artery for sure, but it was also its main sewer. All the raw sewage, all the industrial waste, it all just flowed directly into the water. And here's the truly horrifying part. This was the exact same river that most Parisians got their drinking water from.
So you have this incredible splendor and this unimaginable squalor all crammed together. Something had to give, right? Well, it did. This deep, grinding inequality couldn't last forever, and the result was a revolution that would turn Paris, and frankly the entire world, upside down.
So how did it all fall apart? Well, by the late 1780s, France was basically broke. Decades of expensive wars and just insane royal spending had completely drained the treasury. And to make things even worse, bad harvests meant the price of bread, the main food for poor people, went through the roof. But here's the crucial part. The nobility and the clergy, they paid almost no taxes. The entire financial weight of the country fell on the common people.
And this whole broken system, the all-powerful king, the privileged nobles, the tax-free clergy, it actually had a name, the Ancien Regime, or the Old Regime. And by 1789, the people of Paris were absolutely ready to tear it all down.
And when it finally blew, it happened fast. I mean, incredibly fast. On July 13th, rumors about hoarded grain sent angry crowds to storm a prison. The very next morning, thousands marched on the Bastille, this old medieval fortress, demanding weapons. And by that afternoon, the fortress had fallen.
The Bastille wasn't just a prison. It was this hated symbol of the king's power to just lock anyone up without a trial. The battle to take it was brutal, a 4-hour siege that left nearly 100 of the attackers dead. When the fortress finally fell, its governor was killed, and his head was paraded through the streets on a pike. The revolution had begun in blood.
And that's really the heart of it. The fall of the Bastille was the defining moment. It sent this shocking message across France, across all of Europe, really. The king was not invincible. The people, when they united, could actually defeat royal authority with force.
So what came out of all this violence and chaos? Well, from the ashes of that old regime, a new modern world really did begin to take shape.
And the change was, well, you could literally see it. The Bastille was systematically torn down, stone by stone, until there was nothing left by November of that same year. And across Paris, other symbols of the old regime, the fancy palaces, the statues, they were torn down too, erasing that old world from the very landscape of the city.
But the most powerful things to come out of the revolution weren't made of stone. They were ideas. Liberty, equality, democracy, human rights. These revolutionary concepts, born right there in the streets of Paris, would spread like wildfire across the globe, reshaping how we think about government and society, even to this day.
Which leaves us with one last, pretty crucial question. The story of 18th century Paris is this powerful, intense reminder of what can happen when the gap between the haves and the have-nots just becomes too wide. It kind of forces us to ask, what are the warning signs of a society on the brink? And where might we see echoes of them in our own world today?